November 4th is hereby in session. Let it be noted that all the park committee members are present, Alder Brunette, Alder Weary, Alder Gerlach, and the chair, Alder Scannell. I'll take a motion to approve our agenda.
I move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Alder Gerlach, seconded by Alder Weary. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we have an agenda. I'll take a motion to approve our minutes from our last meeting.
Move to approve.
Moved to approve by Alder Brunette, seconded by Alder Weary. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are on to regular business as soon as I get a thumbs up. Okay.
Oh.
Consideration with possible action on the request by Michael and Holly Goza to grant a perpetual easement in the mahon greenway for residential yard expansion purposes at 2100 Emma Lane. Yeah, that's right. Drive, parcel 21-8116. Staff?
Yeah, so it was recently brought to our attention through a complaint that the owner of 2100 Emma Lane Drive infringed on the greenway by converting the natural landscape to manicured lawn with manicured landscaping also as an expansion to their backyard. So we did go out to the property and verified that that was in fact accurate. And we then reached out to the property owner and informed them of this. They weren't aware that they had infringed. They thought that they were within their property line boundaries. But if you look on the agenda packet, you'll see a map showing where the property lines are located in relation to the area that was disturbed within the city-owned greenway. But like I said, they were very apologetic and they thought that they were within their property lines. So per the city ordinance, we told them that they need to convert that into natural landscape because it is city-owned property. And that per city ordinance, we couldn't just let the grass grow grow long because that would violate the city ordinance for turf grass and the length of turf grass. So they had to actually till it up and plant a natural seed mix. So our park planner did work with the property owner to provide them information on the appropriate way to convert it back to a natural landscape and gave them a seed mix. So the owner was extremely cooperative in resolving this issue. They hired a contractor very quickly and the area was tilled up and planted with prairie seed to the city's satisfaction. My understanding is that Michael and Holly Goza are no longer the property owners anymore. They did sell the house, but I believe they are on the phone for questions. But I'd like to talk a little bit more about the issue before we open up the floor. So although the vast majority of the property was converted back to green space, the owner did opt to leave a 0.4 acre area of the property as turf grass. And the reason is you can see that the patio was built right up to the property line and the landscape around the patio is actually on city property. So initially, staff or myself, I did deny this request, as I usually do when similar requests come forward. But they requested that we grant a perpetual easement allowing them to use that 0.4 acres in perpetuity here so that they would retain that property for personal use. I did check with the inspection department to see if the appropriate permits were pulled when they built the patio. I did hear from the city inspector's office that if a patio is over 100 square feet, the property owner is required to submit a permit application. There is no application on file for this patio that was constructed. And we don't know the exact size of it, but by measuring off the air photo, we're assuming it's about 200 square feet, but that's just a guesstimate on our end. If a permit had been applied, this issue would have been resolved at the time because that would have been caught during the permit application process. So this area that they are proposing to secure an easement for is considered part of the Mahon Creek Greenway. So this greenway was acquired by the city to provide a natural buffer to the creek. You can't see the creek on this air photo, and we're not zoomed out far enough, but there is a creek that runs right through this property. And then the vast majority of the property is heavily wooded, with the exception of basically what you see here with what's been disturbed. I don't know what was there before it was disturbed. We have no records, and I did not go back on the historic files to see if trees were cut down or not. So it could have just been open grass area to begin with when it was converted to yard. So as I mentioned before, similar requests do come forward occasionally, but it doesn't happen that often. I've been involved with similar requests with the West Side Trail and also Hinisra Park. Where homeowners wanted to, they built too close to the property lines and they wanted additional property for their backyards. All of the requests that I've been involved with have been denied. And I truthfully can't remember any request where it has been approved, but I haven't been, with the city forever. So there may be cases where it has been approved. The reason that it's denied for the most part is because the property is acquired for purposes of either natural preservation or public enjoyment purposes. So when there's an infringement issue, the public loses the ability to enjoy that property, which is usually the primary reason the property is acquired in the first place. So although this request is very minor in relation to the larger parcel, I am concerned director of the precedents that this could set moving forward. So if we were to approve this easement request, there might be a snowball effect throughout the entire city where other similar property owners who are not aware of where their property lines are and they develop something either over the property line or close to it. I'm concerned that we would get very similar requests throughout the entire city. And that is why we initially denied it on the staff level, because ultimately it is up to the individual property owner to know where their property boundaries are when they purchase a house and when they improve on it. So, like I said before, I would recommend denying this request, but the previous homeowner who we worked with in restoring this property is on the phone. I think it definitely would be beneficial to open up the floor to hear from them.
Before we open the floor, is there anything that the alder from the district would like to say?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So while Holly's no longer a constituent of mine, she and her husband really feel that they want to make this right for the people that purchased the home, because when they purchased the home, it wasn't known that they maybe couldn't get this small portion. And if perhaps an easement wouldn't work, is there something else that would work? I think the hardship is tearing up the concrete, that little tiny, if you look at it on the patio there, like if there's a way to get that, or just if there's any other way. I hear what you're saying about an easement setting a precedent. Absolutely. I hear that, and I'd be concerned about that as well. These are some very sincere people, very nice people. They didn't mean to do anything wrong. They didn't know. And I believe they also have an attorney who I tried to call, but I could not get hold of him. It was Mr. Duncan. And so the attorney is here as well. So hopefully, would you please open the floor? Thank you.
I move that we open the floor.
Well, I just have one question before we do that. Director Dishite, I'm looking at the picture with the patio, and is part of the patio into the
Even, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the patio is entirely within their boundary and it's just landscape surrounding it that would fall on the greenway. But where the patio is installed, they can't really even walk around the patio without going onto the greenway.
Oh, so it's that tight.
Yeah, and you can see that on the air photo.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure because we did not get it surveyed. All we did was go off of the air photo. In order to know the exact, but we would have to get a surveyor out there to mark the locations.
That is what Holly had told me, that they'd have to tear apart the patio, but perhaps I misunderstood.
And for me, it's difficult to tell on just the air photo. So we would have to hire a surveyor to determine if that's possible, or to determine exactly where the patio falls in relation to the property line.
Okay. That's my only question. Anybody have any other questions, or should we just go open the floor? Okay, motion to open the floor by Alder Gerlach.
Second.
Alder Burnett, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the floor is now opened. Please just wave, or if I can't see everybody. So if you could just, I'll start with the lawyer, Mr. Duncan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Eric Duncan.
Please state your name and address, and then.
Yeah, my name is Eric Duncan. I'm attorney Eric Duncan. My address would be 416 George Street in De Pere. And the Gozas had asked me to speak for them on this issue. The first thing, to just sort of jump ahead, I recognize that the request is just for the perpetual easement, and it's stated in a way that it would be just the city granting that for free. And I recognize the precedent problem that could set. So I wanted to just be clear that what the Gozas are proposing would be either paying for the perpetual easement or paying to purchase the property outright. So that, the city is not in the position of having a flood of people saying, well, you gave free property to someone else. This is, you'd be, selling property for a reasonable price. And as Alderperson Dorf mentioned, this is a situation where, and actually, as Dan mentioned too, the Gozas have been, very cooperative. When this letter came from the city, it was a complete surprise to them. This all kind of happened in terms of the patio and that kind of thing. I understand that property owners have an obligation to know where the property line is, that sort of thing, or that permits are needed. But they had contractors doing this sort of thing and sort of relied on those contractors. As I understand it, they at one point looked around for a boundary stake where the actual property line is, and there isn't one out there. At another point, I did go back through the historical aerial photos of the area, and there were no trees. It was really just sort of open grassland. In fact, the Goz was built in about 2014 when they, just after they bought the property, and they described the area that we're talking about as essentially anthills and just sort of scrubby dirt, that sort of thing. So to a certain extent, what they've done is probably it's a net positive for the city in restoring the conservancy to the seed mix that's been put on there. I guess it's prairie grass and wildflowers and sort of an appropriate mix. They've already incurred roughly $3,000 worth of expense to till everything up and to kind of restore that. The main issue here is that where the actual property line runs is, putting the fire pit issue aside, it's a very aggressive angle across the back of that property. So on one end of the house, it ends up being, fairly close to the back corner of that house. And so by moving that out a little bit, you can see that it's a little pie-shaped triangle. All you're doing is sort of extending from that pivot point out about 25 feet. By doing that, what you've done is restored kind of a natural configuration to the yard, and also, taken the back line far enough back so, as Dan mentioned, you could walk around the fire pit area, and that the fire pit is not actually encroaching on that area. The other thing to keep in mind, Dan had mentioned public enjoyment of this. Where this is situated, you can kind of tell from the aerial photo. They're really, no one except whoever lives in that house can really see any of that portion of the conservancy, but certainly that little triangle. So really what you'd be doing by, I guess, let's say selling the property, that hunk, to the Gozas would be sort of fixing their backyard so it has a little bit more of a natural shape to it, without harming the city in really any appreciable way, or the conservancy. You can see that it's already an irregular shape, so it's not like you're introducing an irregularity to the parcel that would be left. And no one except the property owner can really see it. Honestly, if that parcel is not granted, I think the likelihood that future owners are going to continue encroaching, sort of 2 inches at a time every time they mow, is pretty high. And so you'd kind of be fixing that problem as well. If you have, as I said, sort of a natural, roughly right angle-ish shape to the backyard, I think you're less likely to have an owner that's going to, try to sort of even that out they mow. So in any case, what we're asking for is more of a, I don't know if you'd call it a kind of a customer service sort of thing, by to sell that parcel to the Gozas for, they've been very cooperative in restoring the rest of the parcel, and I don't think it hurts the city very much. Well, not really at all. To agree to purchase that parcel, either having them pay for the easement or purchase the parcel. Either one would be fine. So I don't know if there are any questions.
I was just going to ask that. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Alder Burnett.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Duncan, thank you for that presentation. It was helpful. Have you any idea what the property owner would be willing to purchase the property for?
I do, although obviously we would be hoping the city would tell us what they would be willing to sell it for. I don't know do you guys have an idea of what that would be? If you don't, I can toss out a number, but. Well,
no, that's fine. I don't want, obviously it would be a negotiation between your client, yourself, and the parks director. I was curious. No other question. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Or any other questions, I should say? Then is there anyone else here who would care to speak on this? You getting anybody, James? No. Okay. Motion to close the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Alder Burnett, seconded by Alder Gerlach. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the floor is now closed. And Alder Burnett?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm going to make a motion, but before I make a motion, I just want to say that for me, setting a precedent is troubling in a way, because I have a lot of conservancies in my district, a lot, whether it be Hinestra Park, as Mr. Ditchite said, Fritch Park neighborhood, area along West Point. There's a lot of wooded areas. And Alderman Weir, you have an area by Colburn Park as well that I think you could have some property owners along that area that could do the same thing. But I want to be fair, and I want to explore the possibility of selling the property. So I'll make a motion, and of course, when the time is right, if you want to just speak about the motion or whatever other ideas each committee member has, but I'd like to make a motion to refer this to the Parks Department to negotiate a purchase price for the property in question.
Just that little angle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a second?
I do have just one thing to clarify here. Just the difference between an easement and a purchase and what the difference is between the two.
Okay.
Purchase and easement, the property lines don't change. You just give them a slice of the property and it's kept on file and in the records, but the city has ownership of it, but the homeowner has the rights to it. So that's how an easement works. If we look at doing property acquisition, there's another step in the process that you have to keep into play here. So there would be the acquisition price, which would probably be the same for an easement or an acquisition. I'm guessing it would be the same price or very similar price. But then there'd be an additional fee if it's acquisition, because you would actually have to subdivide that property off to be able to sell it to the homeowner. So there's an additional fee for selling it because you'd have to hire a surveying company to create a CSM. And then once that CSM is created, it has to go through the Plan Commission for approval to adopt that CSM. Once that process is done, then you can sell the property, but you can't sell the property before. So that being said, there's a cost associated with creating the CSM. I did not quote out, but I believe they're usually between $1,000 and $2,000 for hiring a surveyor to do that, but I could be off on that. And so the question becomes, who pays for that additional fee? Would it be the homeowner or the city covering the cost of the CSM?
Okay, Chairman, I'm going to withdraw that motion for the time being.
Okay. Alder Gerlach?
I have a question for Director Ditchite. When I'm looking at this aerial photo, I don't understand what the pink line is, where the two sections.
Sure. So
an artificial thing.
Yeah, so the whole area that's highlighted was area that is all city owned. We own basically half of this map. You can see the property line that goes straight north and south on the map. We own everything east of that line. So the entire area that's highlighted in pink or blue is disturbed within the greenway, as part of the homeowner's development of their yard and landscape. The homeowner was very cooperative on, and that's the area that they already converted back to greenway. That has already been tilled up and it's been planted with native prairie mix.
Good, I understand.
It's just that small triangle that's in question
And
right
let
now.
me ask you, because you said you don't know who would pay for the survey. Is there a precedent for this?
As I said, this doesn't get approved very often. I don't know if there's a precedence. It's just, does the city want to cover the cost of that or not, or put it on the homeowner since it's their request? I guess that's something that would be negotiated as part of the, if that motion gets approved, that would be part of the negotiation process as far as who's responsible to cover that cost. It's just, do you want the city to incur any expenses at all as part of this transaction is really what you'd have to consider.
So if we do have a motion to allow the negotiation of the sale of this property, we will assume, I think, that all costs will be borne by the property owner.
Although I don't think we should assume, we should make it part of the motion.
Part of the motion.
I guess what I'm saying, I'm assuming that the property owner would be okay with that.
Oh, well. Yeah, okay.
Excuse me, just on the formalities. I'm not sure when I'm sort of, it's out of order to just break in or not, but
Yeah, we'd have to open the floor again. So we could open the floor again if you'd like to speak.
if you don't mind.
Yep, motion to open the floor.
So moved.
Second.
By Alder Gerlach, seconded by Alder Brunette. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the floor is now open. Go ahead.
Yes, just so that we're clear, the Gozos are generally speaking, intending to incur all of those costs. Obviously, if it's a $15,000 cost or something crazy, they would want the opportunity to, forget the whole thing. But generally, the idea is that they would be willing to incur those costs. That it's that the existing property line is sort of so unnatural and it's such a problem for sort of how the yard looks that they're willing to go to some length to correct that.
And then a question for you. Then, do you know would they prefer the easement or the purchase of a property?
I think they would prefer the easement because I think it'd be a lot simpler. They could get a real estate, an accurate description of the real purposes of the easement. I think less expensively than doing a full CSM. And along those lines, really all the easement would say would be the property owner would have adjacent property owner would have the right to mow and walk across, the easement, sort of use it as a yard. They could, their kids could play in it, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And, it'd be up to the city, I guess, on whether you restricted any sort of building. I don't know that building makes sense out there. Anyway, I don't think it would have room for a shed or anything anyway, but.
Any other questions? Alder Steuer? You're muted.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, just a couple of things here. It's an interesting case here, but.
Questions first, though, Alder Steuer?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, we'll get to you in a second then. Let me close the floor and everything.
All right.
Okay, motion to close the floor?
Motion to close the floor.
By Alder Gerlach, seconded by Alder Brunette. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the floor is now closed. Go ahead, Alder Steuer.
Okay, thank you, Alder. Director Ditchite, I was just wondering, okay, with conservancies, I presume that they're just passive areas that, people normally don't walk through. It's not a park, it's more of it's a conservancy. So what parameters are on there that would allow people to possibly utilize that, or is it just kind of hands off?
It's not hands off. I mean, it's informal use for the public. So the public has every right to be on that property, to walk anywhere they want in that property, and they use it for the enjoyment of viewing the natural landscape. So bird watching, hiking, they could go mountain biking there if they wanted to. But obviously, if you section off portions of it, they're going to stay off of it. So, I can almost guarantee that very few people, since the house was built in 2014, that although the city had ownership of this parcel, that very few people walked through the yard because they assumed it was private property.
Right.
So since 2014 until now, the public has lost the use of that portion of the park for their public use and enjoyment. But, we would not, right now, we are not planning any active recreation in that area other than just continuing to allow passive recreation. Now, I believe that the property just to the north, you can see it's vacant property. I believe, I'm going off of memory, that's the parcel we talked about at some point, possibly converting that to parkland. Didn't we have that discussion, Alderdorf, recently? I believe it was that parcel.
Is that where we met outside for the neighborhood meeting?
I wasn't part of that meeting.
You weren't?
No.
Yeah, I can't, I mean, I know where Emmeline is. I can't remember. I can't remember, but I know there was some talk of a park out there, a small park.
Yeah. Obviously, if that ever becomes a park, then there would be a little bit more use than there is now. But if that's not the property, then that would not apply. I'd have to look at a map to see if the city has ownership of that parcel to the north. I can do that real quick.
I believe there
one
are.
other comment. I just had one other comment, Chair, if I could.
Well, while the director's looking that up, go ahead.
Okay. From what I've heard on this goes, I'm sure they sound like very fine, upstanding citizens. I have a little difficult time understanding that they did not know where their property lines were at all in the back. And I don't know if the real estate firm fell forward on this and didn't do a correct job in showing this or delineating this. So I just have a little trouble with that, even though I know they had good intentions to make right. I still have a hard time with that. So I'm going to just use that as a comment, and that'll be it for now for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alder Stoyer. Alder Burnett. I'm sorry, Alder Dorf.
This is for Greg. So there's a way to purchase an easement, not just to grant an easement. Is that what I understood you to say?
Well, easements can either be done two ways. One is you can just grant it to whoever is asking for the easement. A lot of times we don't charge utility companies for easements, but the question is, you charge for an easement for a private citizen or even a business, because in essence, the city is losing that space and giving it for another use. Now, the reason the city doesn't really charge for the utility easements is because that use usually involves public benefit. There's a public benefit to allowing the use of that easement for utilities to go in. It's for the general good of the cause for the public. But in this case, it's allowing an easement for private property. And so I would recommend that if you want to go that route, I would still recommend not approving it altogether. But if the park committee and city council want to look at doing that, I would recommend doing it for a sale price of either selling the easement or selling off the property.
Then it's a one-time sale. The easement's
Correct.
not perpetually you're paying for the easement. So what I heard you say then is if it's selling it as a piece of property, then there's the additional expenses incurred and you go through a bigger process. If it's an easement, it still belongs to the city, but it's giving the right of use to the property owner and they can use it as part of their yard, but they still pay for it. So, and that's just a little easier to do.
It's an easier process to go through, but when you look at a plat map, it'll show up as city property. So the only way that the easement would be, the public would know if it's an easement is if they actually look up where the easement is, because that would not show up on the city plat map. So when you're, if somebody gets onto the city website and pulls up the map, then they would not know that that's an easement for private use.
But the owner would know.
The owner would know and the city would know, but the general public would not.
Oh, okay.
Alder Gerlach.
There's a little more confusion to the public if it's an easement.
But right now, the public there's not a lot of public use, but
Right.
there could be someday.
Now, I just looked up that parcel and that is not the city-owned property for that park
Okay.
that we talked about. I was incorrect, so I spoke out.
Okay. So then that doesn't even enter into it, that it's,
So
okay.
it's strictly passive use. But at some point, there might be a desire to do a paved trail in there. I can't tell you that's never going to happen because this actually connects to the UW Arboretum. Maybe at some point there'll be a demand from the public to link this area to the Arboretum. Now, there's plenty of room to do that where we wouldn't necessarily need the 0.4 acres in this scenario. But if adjacent property owners come by with similar requests, maybe you become limiting yourself in the future if there's ever a trail request. It doesn't really come into play for this request, though.
Okay. Alder Gerlach.
2 questions, please. for the director. First of all, for that little blue triangle, at the widest point of it, approximately how big is that? How many feet is that?
I did not measure it, but when Mr. Duncan spoke, I think he said it was 25 feet.
Okay. My second question is, it seems to me that we don't want to set the precedent of doing anything with an easement because this could open a can of worms. But I'd like to know how the Parks Department would feel about selling this piece outright if the property owner pays all of the costs.
If that's the direction that the park committee and council wish to go, I would an outright sale over an easement, because then the property lines change on all of the city maps and it's much less confusing to the general public. But there is an additional process and there is an additional cost.
But all of the costs would be borne by the property owners if we set it up that way.
Yeah.
I would make that motion.
Okay, so there's a motion to sell the property with all costs entailed by the property owner.
Well, I think what we would have to do is to negotiate the sale price. Because if we were to do that, I think we'd have to let you know what that price is to see if you're okay with that price. We do that for all property sale transactions. And in this case, we don't know what that price is. There's two ways to come up with a price for that. One is to do an appraisal, which the city would bear the cost for that appraisal if we were to do that, because we would not, we would prefer that the city do the appraisal over the homeowner paying for it, just to protect the city. Not to say that the homeowners are dishonest, but that's just the process that we always go through. The second option is to go through the assessor's office and set that value based on what the going rate is for residential property and what they would be taxed on for the square footage. I've already had discussions with the assessor's office on that. So I do know what they would charge for that just from an assessed value based on residential land in that area. But that's not the same as appraisal. So we would have to decide, do we want to do an appraisal or an assessed value? Because the two prices would probably be different.
To do is refer it to staff and let you all figure that out.
I would say if you would like us to research it forward and not deny the request, then refer to staff to negotiate a sale price for this and bring it back to Park Committee for further discussion.
Would it also be, at when point would we want to send it to planning? Would it be wise to do that first? Because if they reject it, then that's the end of it, correct?
I would doubt that they would reject it, in all honesty, but you never know. Obviously, it's another committee and another process. Right. But we wouldn't be able to go through that process until we're sure that the homeowner or the Gazas in this situation would be interested in proceeding. So if we can't negotiate a price, we'll have to come back and talk about it in closed session and see where the park committee feels the price should be based on the information we supply for you to review. But if they're not willing to proceed with it based on the price, then there's no reason to incur costs to subdivide the property out. So, and then, as part of it too, maybe as part of this discussion, maybe it makes sense to keep the price down to maybe talk about really how much property is necessary or needed as part of the sale. So if they wanted to keep the cost down, they could, sliver it down a little bit more so that the square footage is less, which then means there'd be less impact to the parks and less cost for them to incur because the purchase price would be less. So those are all things we can work through with the homeowners in advance before we actually subdivide it out.
So is that your motion, Alder Gerlach, to refer this to staff to work out with the?
I would be happy to put that motion forward. It's just that Alder Brunette and Alder Weary have been so quiet. And I wondered, maybe they have some wisdom that they would like, if maybe they would prefer to make a motion. I don't know. They haven't said much about it. I don't want to
Lay your
drive.
wisdom on
No,
us,
but,
gentlemen. Alder Weary.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I don't know about wisdom. Maybe some insight.
Wisdom tooth.
Yeah, there you go. Director, I brought up an aerial view of the Mahon Creek area.
Yeah.
And it's quite a big wooded area. Is that all in the Conservancy?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All the way up to, I think it's Circle Drive, right?
Yeah, it's a large area that the city owns, and it abuts the Arboretum to the north, UW Green Bay property.
Gotcha.
So it's a large natural area.
And I know we don't want to start setting a precedent or the idea that we'd, entertain this, but I think as an elected body, I don't know, precedent never really seems to come as an inhibitor when we decide things. You can change your mind, you can do this, you can do that. I don't think it binds us in any way for the future. So I think it's best to try and sell this off. And, I think, again, we don't want to be limiting our natural area, but this is such a small piece. And I think government can come off as just heavy-handed and, hard to do business with. And I think this is a small thing we can do that really won't affect any projects we do back there. So I'd be fine with the motion, Alder Gerlach, that you were doing. I think we can go ahead in there.
Thank you. Okay, I move that we refer this to staff to explore the possibility of selling this portion to the property owners.
And bring it back to Park Committee discussion.
Yes.
Second that.
Okay, so motion by Alder Gerlach, seconded by Alder Brunette. I agree with Alder Weary's comments. This is just such a small part, and it's such a unique situation, and there's still tons of room around all that. I don't think we're really hurting ourselves, and I think this is why they pay us the big bucks. I mean, if we were just going to go by the rules without using our brains to figure out these situations, a robot could do this job. So we've got a motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman?
Discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Is that
Alder LaFave?
LaFave? Oh, yeah, Alder LaFave.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You have the floor.
Yes. I just wanted to chime in that I think it would be better for the city to have them buy it than an easement. I wonder if could be some legal issues if you have an easement. There could be some problems with that. I'd be leery of that. So, and I think too, by selling it to them versus an easement, you're not really setting a precedent.
We're setting the precedent of selling, but.
Well, yeah, but that's a little different because.
Yes, it is a little different, but yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So, okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? I see nothing. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously.
Thank you, Alders, very much. Even though it's a former constituent, I still really care about this family. So thank you so much for even being willing to listen.
We'll send you a bill.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you all very much. Would we? I'm a little unclear on next communication on our end. Would the Parks Department just reach out to us and say, "Hey, here's what we've worked out"? Okay.
More than likely, I'll have Corey work with you on this, and
Okay.
I know you've met Corey before, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you all.
Yep, thank you.
I need to see James. Are we okay? Okay, we're all set. Item number 2, consideration with possible action on the request by Alder LaFave to take into where the playground equipment and splash pad are located in relation to the parking lot at Farland Park. As the parking lot is almost a block away, it is causing illegal parking on the 1500 block of Smith Street. Staff, do you want to take this first?
Yeah, I guess I'll give a brief summary and then Alder Lefebvre can speak and talk about any topics I missed because we did touch bases last week on this issue. So I do want to start out the conversation, the existing conditions to the park. So if you take a look at the park committee agenda packet, you will see an air photo of the park along with the property boundaries highlighted in a magenta color. The shelter, playground, and splash pad have been in place for years. So those are currently, although they're not labeled here, you can see them right off of Smith Street. So you can see the splash pad and the playground are literally right at the end of Smith Street. And then the shelter is located halfway between Harold and Smith Street. And then there's a basketball court right there. The playground was installed in 1994 and the splash pad was installed in 2000. So at that time, there was no parking lot constructed at Farland Park. So you can see that there's a parking lot there now, right in the middle of the park. So these facilities were placed fairly close to Smith Street and Harold Street intentionally because there was no parking lot at that time. So this allowed individuals to park on these streets and then they would have a short walk to these amenities without having to lose the ball field. There's a practice ball field just to the northwest of the basketball court. So it's between the basketball court and parking lot. At that time, when the amenities were installed, the area of the park that's currently the parking lot and the area to the west of that, which is a soccer field now, was privately owned. So the city did not even own that area, that chunk of property to the west, which is about a third of the park. So the city acquired that land for park expansion in 2005 after the amenities were installed. So after that land was acquired and converted to parkland, the alderman at the time worked with a landscape architect, not a staff member, but a professional landscape architect to design a conceptual master plan for the expanded park. This was done through neighborhood meetings. They were involved in the master plan process. And at the time, what was decided is we would build the parking lot where it is, along with a soccer field, and that parking lot would service the soccer field. And then the playground and splash pad and shelter, people could still park on Harold and walk in. So the master plan wanted to keep those items intact because they didn't want to incur the additional expense with relocating those. So this issue does seem to surface every so often where we do get complaints along either Harold Street or Smith Street where there is issues of parking, where people are illegally parking or blocking driveways. Throughout the years when that's happened, we have worked with the police department to encourage additional enforcement of that. And Alder Lefebvre can speak to that when I'm done talking here, but he already has contacted the police in this situation. So, option one is to increase the enforcement out there and do ticketing where people who aren't following the parking regulations. Option two would be to remove the street parking altogether. Right now, and we could put restrictions so only residents could park there. That's an option. I have not reviewed that with Public Works to see, or the neighborhood to see if that's something they're interested in, but that could be an option if everybody's in agreement. And the third option to resolve this issue would be to redesign the master plan and move some amenities around. Obviously, there's a substantial cost involved in that. We'd have to move the playground and the splash pad and the shelter closer to the parking if we want people using those amenities to actually use the parking lot to get to them. That may or may not resolve the issue if we don't limit the parking, because people could still park on Harold and walk in. It's not that far of a walk, depending on where you put that, unless you put it over where the soccer field is. But those are really the three options that we have moving forward. So I guess I'd recommend you open it up to Alder Lefebvre and let her speak. And if I miss something, she can add to the description of the issue.
Okay. This is Alder Lefebvre. Yes, the big issue is Smith Street, not Harold. There is no issue with the parking, illegal parking driveways on Harold Street. It's all on Smith Street. As you can see, Smith Street just ends, and that's one block only. It's only a block long there, so that they park right at the end. There's signs saying no parking, and there's a fire hydrant. And the residents have to call, because a lot of times these people also park their driveways, block their driveways. And so this has been an issue going on with me, I think, since I became alder. And so I've been trying to find a way to do it. I talked to the chief of police, and I said, this is becoming such a problem that you're going to have them actually ticket people, because I bet a lot of these are repeat people, because if they park, someone calls, they find them in the park, and they'll just tell them, go move your car. And the chief said, he said, probably, this is just becoming so outrageous. I mean, what's happening, that these people don't even think. I would never think to block someone's driveway. But anyway, I was there last month. I just stopped to talk. Chris, Bronson Smith lives right there. And I stopped to talk to him and see how it was going. And here was a lady parked. She was parked partially blocking his driveway. And the police officer was there. He brought her over, and he just, I talked to him. I said, this is becoming such an issue. And he said, well, we're just going to have her move her car. She didn't mean to do it, blah, blah, blah. So the police are not issuing citations. So something's got to be done with the park. And everybody wants to park at the end. They can't even park down the middle of the block. They park on the end, and you can see, because it just dead ends there, there's not a lot of room to park and move around. So they park there because that's right where the splash pad and the playground equipment is. And you can see where the parking is. Nobody's going to park there and walk all the way through the grass. There's no sidewalk. The sidewalk is way over there. If they have to go over the sidewalk, it's even longer for them to walk. People today just don't want to walk, I guess. So something's got to be done, because this is becoming such an issue on Smith Street. As I said, Harold Street has no problem. Now, you can see there's a cul-de-sac. And I didn't really look, but I think they can park on the cul-de-sac. But, this is becoming such an issue.
Thank you. Alder Gerlach?
I'd like to ask Alder Lefebvre a question, please. What do you think is the solution?
Well, you should ask the chair.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, would you please ask Alder Lefebvre when you have a chance, what does she think is the solution to this?
Alder Lefebvre, do you have a solution to this?
Well, I know Director Ditchite did mention that every year they replace old playground equipment, and they could put this on the list, and we could move the playground equipment away from Smith Street. So
I thought it was
anywhere that would be closer to the parking lot. It could be, that would be, I think, south of the parking lot. There's a big area there. I don't think that's where the soccer fields are. I can't see on the map here. Director Ditchite, are the soccer fields in, there's a 25, 24, and 23. Is it in 25 or 24?
The soccer field is in 25.
Okay. So what is in 24?
24 is at the northern end. That would be a practice ball field. So you can't see the backstop, but the backstop for it, I believe, is in 23. So it's not heavily used, but it is a practice baseball field or Little League or softball field.
Yeah. Well, it could, then we could really put it down in 23, but up closer to the parking lot. You would not be interfering with 25, 24, or 23, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's places you could put it. I mean, I couldn't guarantee that people wouldn't still park on Smith Street and walk in, or cause a bigger problem on Harold Street. Because if you put it in that location, you're now moving it closer to Harold Street. So I can't.
No, I'm thinking more closer to where it looks like that's the railroad tracks coming through.
Yeah,
at the end of the parking lot, but over more by the railroad tracks. If you could, it looks like there's enough room there. You could put something right in there.
I think
that would mean that the people in Harold and Smith would have to walk, so they're probably going to use the parking lot.
Yeah, and so that's something that we would flesh out as part of a master planning process when we get money to amenities. So, I'd be hesitant to tell you right now where the best location would be for that playground. Could it be relocated further away from Smith Street? Yes. But we'd still want to put it in a location that's convenient for the neighborhood. I think a lot of people walk in from Harold Street and Smith Street. So even if they're not parking, you still get a lot of children coming from that area. So you don't want to make it too inconvenient for children to get to the playground off of those streets either. So I think you can make it less inconvenient and maybe encourage people to park at that parking lot. But you still want to make it fairly convenient for park users. So,
in both Harold and Smith Street, I don't think there's a lot of children. I think it's more older couples, people. There aren't a lot of children. I do know at the end of Smith Street, I think the one house has some children, but it's not. There's a lot of more older people that live in that on both of those streets. There's not a lot of children. And because there's a busy street at the other end of Harold and, I think, is that Elizabeth Street? I'm trying to think my map here. Smith and them, that's a busy street. There aren't many people, I think, walking all the way down.
And as Alder Lefebvre said, this is one of our older playgrounds in the park system. It was installed in 1994, and that is the same age as some of our other oldest playgrounds that we're currently replacing. I believe the one at Gagnon Park that we're replacing this year was installed in 1994 also. As far as our 5-year CIP, or capital improvement plan, we did put a draft of that together already and submitted it to the finance department. It'll be reviewed at the finance committee probably in December or January. And in that plan, we show that we do have $100,000 budgeted to replace the Farland Park playground in 2024. And we also put money in 2025 to replace the shelter at Farland Park. So if you wanted to bump up the timeline to replace the playground sooner, you would have to make some amendments to our 5-year CIP, to our 5-year capital improvement plan. And just so you know, Alder Lefebvre, I did tell you that we like to replace 2 playgrounds a year. And so when I looked at that plan, we do not have any playgrounds planned for 2021 at all because of other priorities in our park. And in 2022, we only have 1 replacement scheduled. And again, that's also an old playground with a similar age. So if you wanted to switch out the playgrounds, you wouldn't be able to do so for 2021 unless you add to the CIP or.
Okay, so it'd have to be, in 2 years. Okay. I would, because this is in my district, I would prefer, yes, that being done as is one of the oldest ones. And then maybe too, and also on Smith Street, then make a recommendation. Would have to go to DPW, I guess, that Smith Street and Harold Street be restricted to residents only. Because in the meantime, because that would help. And I would think, and I would hope, I should say, that if people are then illegally parking and blocking driveways, that's the main concern, the driveways and the fire hydrant, with people parking there, that the police would actually then start ticketing.
Alder Gerlach, did you have a comment or question?
I was just going to say, so we could, move forward on this and come to a resolution. If this is really, because we're not going to be replacing the park playground equipment in the near future, if this is really a parking issue and we just want to restrict parking, what does our committee do? How can we just move this into parking and let them take care of it?
Well, there's two things. So if you're looking for support from the police to just encourage or do additional enforcement, all that you do is you direct staff to work with the police department to enforce parking restrictions on the roads adjacent to Farland Park. But if you want to actually look at restricting parking, I would say that would probably have to be referred to INS for them to review and make a determination if that's feasible. I don't know what the process is for that. I did not talk to Director Grenier about that possibility. I would imagine we'd have to survey the block and see if it's something the residents would be supportive of and not just one or two people. Because if you put those restrictions on it, it is although it benefits some, it's also a hassle for others. Like when people come to visit, they have to call that in and take that care, and get that taken care of, or else those people that are there to visit them will get a ticket.
Yes.
So I don't know if the neighborhood's supportive of it. I don't know if Public Works is supportive of it.
I'm just wondering if it really is something the Parks Committee handling, if this just needs to go to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and those INS people, I know that committee. I got my doubts about that committee.
Me too.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I would say for the signage out there now, could part of this problem be that people are not as aware of there's a parking lot there? Is there any signage saying no parking on the street? Use the parking lot? Anything like that to help maybe educate or redirect users?
I don't know that offhand. I did not go out there to look at the signage on Smith Street.
Smith Street has signs at the end, no parking.
So they already signed no parking and they're being violated.
All the time.
Yeah. So I seems to me this really is an enforcement issue. We've got this solved, as far as the parking issue goes. We're just not enforcing. And perhaps we could add to it, if we could add a sign, because maybe people aren't aware of a parking lot off to the, I don't know if you can see it from Smith or whatever, or if people are.
No.
Yeah. So if we could maybe have a sign saying use the parking lot and off of Eastman, maybe that would help alleviate the problem too. But I really feel it's an enforcement issue, from what I can see here. We're telling people not to park in their parking. They should be ticketed. And maybe we need to add violators will be ticketed or towed. I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, it just says no parking, and I don't know if the signs could be.
Possibly the motion. Maybe what the motion could be is to direct staff to work with the police department and the Department of Public Works to review signage and enforce parking restrictions on roads adjacent to Farland Park.
Mr. Chairman, would you entertain a motion to that effect?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm wondering if we should open the floor here. I see Bronson's here. If he would
okay.
Speak. He just texted a little message to all of us. Bronson, would you like to speak? Could you just give me a heads up for that if you do? And we'll open the floor, or I don't have a camera or microphone. So I guess not. Okay. I think we're going to end up making the motion as directed by the director. Unless anybody else has a better idea.
Well, I don't know I guess I don't know how this works, but they did put a communication in the chat box. I know they said they don't have a microphone. Sorry, I'm getting feedback. They said they don't have a microphone or camera, but they did put a communication in the chat box. Does that have anything does that need to be read at all or anything?
Yeah, that's what I've been reading. So, shades of Jimi Hendrix. Yeah. Well, I kind of like the motion we got. With, unless anybody else has any other ideas or discussion. Alder Weary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I heard correctly, Director, we wouldn't even be doing a new playground or shelter for a couple of years, right? So we could try this first, and if it doesn't work next year.
Correct. Yep.
Well, it always sounds like a nice, easy answer. I think those of us who've been around a lot, whenever we say we're just going to try more enforcement, I don't know. That's hit or miss, right?
Yeah, sometimes it works well, other times it doesn't. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
And you know, from Rush Aquatic Center, similar
Yep.
situations. So.
Yep. So we do have time here. Were we going to be doing the shelter and playground area at the same time, or was it 2 different years?
It was 2 different years is what's in our 5-year CIP. So obviously that still has to go through the process, and you still have to get the funding approved before we can really plan for that. But right now we have the playground requesting funding in 2024 and the shelter requesting funding in 2025.
I think short term, well, why don't we try the different signage and enforcement? And if that doesn't work, I think we do bring this back and we seriously look at doing something different. Too bad there's not a cul-de-sac here. That's kind of unusual. It just kind of ends like that. But
well, if the playground and splash pad is moved, then you can put a cul-de-sac there. The reason it was never put in is because the splash pad's in the way. The cul-de-sac on Harold Street was added after the playground and splash pad were in.
Okay. Well,
that was done maybe 15 years ago.
So there's some possibilities there. This used to be called Pickle Park.
Yes, it was.
I played a lot of football here. St. Joe's playing against Peter Paul.
The dirt smelled like pickles when we excavated and brought in new tile.
I believe it.
I miss that smell.
So I don't, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's feel good. I hope something would come of it with signage and enforcement. I think we tried that first, everything we could think of. If we give it a year, and we start looking at how we can reconfigure the park. I know it's not cheap, and everybody has park projects they want to do. I'm thinking of another pool.
Put a pool there.
No, not on the east side.
Okay.
So is there a motion?
Yeah, I think that would be a good, thank you very much. I think that let's try that first, and then we can always bring it back. Thank you.
Yeah. We could maybe even move up some dates, perhaps, but
sure,
it'll come later. So is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to refer this to staff to work with Department of Public Works and Police Department on additional signage and enforcement.
Second.
Motion made by Alder Weary, seconded by Alder Gerlach. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. This might be another one that I got done after 2 years working on something. Thank you.
It's the way it goes sometimes.
Yes, thank you very much.
James, we are okay. On to, I believe it's item 3. Consideration with possible action on the staff summary of the research and cost estimates for the necessary floodway studies to reopen the East River trails within the city limits on both sides of the East River. Staff.
So Alderman Galvin originally brought this request forward. We talked about it, I think, 2 park committees ago. Alderman Galvin is not here at this meeting, so I'll leave it up to you if you'd like to have the discussion at a future park committee, and we can, do it, bring it to a committee that he can attend, or I can present it now and we can see where the conversation goes. I'll leave it up to you. I did not discuss this with Alder Galvin in advance, so.
Alder Burnett?
I'll make a motion to hold until our next Parks Committee.
Second.
Okay, motion by Alder Burnett to hold, second by Alder Weary, and I think we need to charge Alder Galvin for this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. On to item 4, consideration with possible action on hiring McMahon for $19,800 to complete stormwater management engineering for parking lot expansion at the Wildlife Sanctuary Nature Center. Staff.
So in 2019, the Friends of the Wildlife Sanctuary fundraised over $3 million for an expansion to the Nature Center at the Wildlife Sanctuary. So as you know, the lower level housed new classrooms for the 4K program, and the upper level is a large rental space with a caterer's kitchen. So the rental space can accommodate 200 people. But due to COVID-19, we have not been able to open that facility yet to the public because of concerns with a large public gathering. But when it does open, we are going to have a large parking problem at the Nature Center. So right now, there's about 80 parking stalls that are there, which accommodates us for the most part, the old Nature Center. Now, if you ever have the old Nature Center open the same time as the rental space, we are going to have a large parking lot problem there, and people are going to have to walk quite a distance or park illegally on other, sanctuary property.
On East Shore Circle.
So, we are going to have to expand that parking lot size. So we'll need to double or triple the size of that parking lot to adequately provide the number of stalls that we're going to need. So last year, the city did bond $400,000 to begin this project. So one of the first steps to start the engineering is to hire a consultant to design the stormwater management associated with the project. So we did issue a request for proposals to 5 engineering firms. Of the 5, 3 companies provided a quote for this work. The low quote was from Riekert Milke for $19,550. Unfortunately, their company did make a few exceptions to the required scope of work listed in the RFP. So they did not include the following in their quote. So we asked for all companies to dig test pits, provide geotechnical reports, and to do the associated permitting, allowing us to construct the project. Other items in their scope of work too, but those 3 items, the low bidder omitted from their proposal. So staff is actually proposing to hire McMahon for a little bit more, for $19,800. So they're $350 more expensive. They didn't make any exceptions to the required scope of work. And in our opinion, what was missing in the low quote is valued at more than $350. We have worked with McMahon in the past, and we have no issues or concerns working. You approve hiring McMahon for $19,800 to complete the engineering.
Move to approve.
There's a second?
Second. Sorry, my battery was almost dead. I had to plug in.
Just put your finger in the socket, Alder Weary.
Almost dead. Blew my hat off.
Yeah. Motion by Alder Burnett, seconded by Alder Weary. Any further discussion? Alder Gerlach?
I just have a question, the same question I always ask of the rest of the committee. Where's this money coming from, and are you okay with it?
Yeah, so this money would come out of the $400,000 that's picked last year.
Okay, so it's all paid for.
Well, yes, the money is there through bonding in 2020.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. And we're on to item number 5. Oh, I'm sorry, 6. Yeah, no, 5. 6. There is no 6. Need my spectacles. Consideration with possible action on the appeal of allocating $72,910 from the existing beach funding for an amendment to the scope of work for Patrick Engineering to complete the engineering associated with the beach, pier, and boardwalk project at Bay Beach Amusement Park. Staff.
So a few months ago, we discussed revising the phasing plan and refinancing plan for the beach project at Bay Beach Amusement Park. Modifications to that plan included reducing the length of the pier in order to stay within a $2.1 million construction budget for the pier. And it also entailed modifying the engineering documents to accommodate a two-phase construction plans instead of a single-phase construction project. So both of those changes will require additional engineering fees in order to complete the associated engineering. So for the pier modifications, the consultant is required to redo all of the structural calculations for the entire pier. They've already done those calculations for the longer pier. They have to redo them for the shorter pier. So although it seems like a very simple, easy fix, they do have to run all their numbers again just to make sure that the shortened pier is engineered properly. In addition, the consultant will incur additional costs to split the projects into two phases. So they have to create two bid documents instead of a single bid document package. So this additional engineering is needed to ensure that what's built in phase one accommodate easily the phase two construction without having to rebuild portions of phase one. So because you're phasing it, you have to really put a lot of thought in how the two projects correspond, and how you end the first project fits well with how you begin the next project. So there is additional engineering. In conjunction with that, additional meetings will be required to work through the changes. And they're also going to have to work with the DNR on it, on modifying them. So in our original phasing plan, we did put an estimate of $30,000 for this additional engineering fees for the pier modifications. Unfortunately, we really didn't consider at the time additional fees for the phasing plan modifications that would need to be done. So after we approved the phasing plan, we did work with the consultant that's already hired to do the work and asked them for a revised fee schedule, and they came out with $72,910. We did review this with Public Works engineering staff and the assistant director there, and all of us feel that the engineering associated with the fee is acceptable in our opinion. So the engineering was just much more involved than what we thought it was going to be when we brought the original phasing plan together. So there is enough money in the phasing plan through the $5 million that was bonded initially to cover the costs for this. So I would recommend we approve allocating the $72,910 from the existing beach funding for an amendment to the scope of work.
Alder Burnett.
Thank you, Chairman, Director Ditchite. Just refresh my memory, you might have mentioned this just a few minutes ago. What was the budgeted cost that you anticipated?
Originally, it was $30,000, but that was just for the pier engineering. We didn't take into account the additional engineering for restructuring the plan documents to change it from one phase to two phases.
How does that happen? I mean, I don't mean this to sound in a disrespectful way to you, but how does that happen?
That was an error on my part when I put the phasing plan together.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Don't read any more into that question.
Nope, that's fine. It's a fair question.
That's it, Chairman.
Is there a second? Is there a motion then? Is that without a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Motion by Alder Burnett, seconded by Alder Gerlach. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Then we are on to the informational part of our agenda, Director's Report and updates, Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Department. We have that wonderfully comprehensive document. I don't know if there's anything the director cares to add, or if anybody has any comments or questions.
I would just like to point point out two things. At yesterday's election, several wards voted at the new rental space at the sanctuary and also at the main pavilion at Bay Beach Amusement Park. And it really went off without a hitch. So it went well. We really didn't receive any complaints, and things ran very smoothly at both locations. So I just wanted you all to be aware of that. And then secondly, I do want to point out that, this year, if we haven't previously mentioned it, we're mentioning it now. This is the 100th year anniversary of the Green Bay Parks Department. So we're very proud of that. We had initially planned on doing a lot of different events throughout the years to celebrate that occasion, but with COVID-19, it really has been pretty quiet in the Parks Department. But one thing we are doing is we did plant 100 trees at Dan's Park to symbolize the 100-year anniversary of our department. So we did it in a very artistic manner in a circular pattern. And then we have a walkway that cuts through the middle of the grove of trees. And then there's a gathering space right in the middle, and we're planning on putting some artistic benches. So, that was funded through the RDA. They gave us money to implement this project. It's under construction right now. It's almost done. And tomorrow there is a ribbon cutting ceremony at noon to commemorate this new amenity in our park. So I just wanted to let you or make you aware of that ribbon cutting tomorrow. Other than that, that's all I have to add to what's already in the report.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Alder LaFave?
Can I ask Director Ditchite, under your Design and Development Division here, you got Bay Beach Amusement Park, shoreline improvements. Does this have anything to do with the dike itself?
No, the shoreline improvements is in regards to the beach and pier project. It's not about the shoreline improvement. That project is all funded and run through Public Works, not Parks.
Yeah. So, are you looking at anything to improve the dike? I seriously, I brought this up several times. I don't know if it's because it has silted up more. You're not very high down out there. If you come to my property, I'm 3 houses over.
If I may, Alder LaFave, that's not Parks, is it? That's DPW, isn't it?
I think she's referring to our
park,
beach project.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But the dike itself, which protects Bay Beach, is going to. I think you really need to look at that because there's a difference in height. There's not a lot of height there, and these storms are getting worse. And as the water is coming up more and more every year, it seems like it's going up. That's something I think you better look at and have engineers or somebody look at your portion of the dike. Nothing's been done to that dike in years, and there's a lot of damage, rocks moved, different things. So I really think this is important for protecting Bay Beach.
Okay, thank you, Alder LaFave.
All right, that's all I got.
Alder Gerlach.
I just want to tell the director that I went to Dan's Park. I looked at the tree planting. It's just really lovely. And because I'm on the Public Arts Commission, because Alder Scannell isn't, I saw the design for the benches. I'm really excited about it. And I just also want to tell you, I was in Preble Park today, and the forestry department was just doing an efficient and wonderful job of trimming those great big trees. And before I turned around, they were all done and they were gone. Good job.
Yep, thank you. I'll pass that on to the forestry department.
Thank you.
Wouldn't want to leave them out of this. Director, it seems to me that eventually someday we'll get out of COVID, whether it be a year or two down the road, and though we might be 102. Is there still plans? I think we should still celebrate 100 years. It's 102, but we feel like 100 something, whatever. I hope we don't. I hope all those plans that were, came up with to celebrate, we don't shelve those. We just hang on to them for a year or two.
That's a really good idea. So we'll keep that in mind next year and hopefully it'll be gone then.
Any other comments, questions from anyone? Alder Burnett? Oh, you're breaking up, Alder.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Okay, a motion received and placed on file by Alder Burnett.
Second.
Second by Alder Weary. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's received and placed on file.
Move to adjourn.
Well, I'm waiting for James to give me a thumbs up here. Okay, our next park meeting is scheduled November 18th, 2020. Motion to adjourn by Alder Brunette.
If I could, under discussion,
Oh, certainly.
7:40, next meeting, 7:40. We'll give it 10 minutes. That'll allow everybody to switch over. And there's somebody who's trying to log in for that meeting. They keep messaging me why they can't log in. So it's because we're going on. So I'll talk.
40?
How about 7:41?
All right, I got a deal.
Isn't it 6:40?
Be 6:40.
6:40.
Oh, man.
Still, I saved it time.
Yeah.
My little city computer here says 7:30. It didn't update. Like, wow, we really went long. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
How's this?
6:40.
Okay, so we'll meet INS in about 10 minutes. Motion to adjourn by Alder Burnett. That was seconded by Alder Weary. Yes. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There we go. Thank you, Director. Thank you, James. Everyone, good job. See you in a few.